Blooper morning. Hey everybody, welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied brain Justin. How's everybody? Looks like, yeah, it's Dance Lady today. I don't know. I almost didn't want to work on her today, but we'll see. I have to set up her little, her dish. And I have to find a good thing to use for that. And David made a recommendation. We're probably going to spend a lot of day doing freehand on the carpet, and I'm just going to set up the dish today. That's the dealio. And if you're wondering what I'm working on, I'm talking about doing a little collection dish for this part of the carpet. But yeah, so we're doing basing today. I've been looking at Persian rug patterns, although, I don't know, part of me just wants to sacrifice the dish and just go for more tassels, but then we really can't paint anything like, well, or we'll paint and I'll have to do tassels elsewhere. Yeah. No, I can't twist a dome. Actually, I'm committed to as far as the subject matter, I'm committed to working on the model that I set up in advance, because it's all posted on social media and stuff. So actually, I cannot change my mind unless I do it in advance. So this is not a okay, here's a recommendation. Master regular NMM before you try Sky Earth. Sky Earth is trying Sky Earth may make you understand things a little bit better, Kuriko, or it may just frustrate you and make you hate everything. I don't have a lumen setting, Fubeka. I use a Neewer, Neewer, giant ring light. It's like an 18-inch one. It's gigantic. I call it the sun. And it's turned on to its max, and it's about one tick off of maybe a tick and a half off the pure warm setting. It adjusts cool and warm, and it adjusts minimum and maximum. I don't really care about lumens. I just care about, is it enough light to paint by? But you can see how light it is on my face. So it's very, when I move my hand up, see how bright it is? It was like really bright. The other one is the lamps that we use at ReaperCon, the Tautronics, Tautronics, Tautronics technically, but it's just a little L, and it's an LED bar on the top, and it's adjustable to color and strength. It has like 5 settings up and down. So that I use a combo of those, and yeah, so I use a little bit of a warmer, I prefer neutral light. I don't like out lights, Fubeka, because they're really blue, and it always bothered me. I felt like it shifted color, and that's like the capital sin on Anne's, like, you know, Anne's scale of bad thing. Anything that shifts the color I'm looking at, I don't like. So I try to use pretty neutral, and on the LED, that tends to be more toward the warm and less toward the cool. In my experience, a little bit more than that. Yeah, I don't like them. I just use LED lights. Almost all of the LED lights out there right now are adjustable, as far as warm, cool, and how bright or dim they are. So what you really have to do is you just have to mess around, like I did. Because they do have changeable settings, you have a lot of, you can play until because it's going to work. What works in my setting isn't going to work in your setting. Like, it depends on how much room you have around you, because, like, the ring light is big. So I had to figure out where to put it in my setup where it would fit, right? And I have 2 big box lights, too, but I don't use those anymore because I don't have the room for them in this setup, because I'm in a tiny little half of a bedroom. But I also have a natural white light window, which is gonna, produce more lumens than anything, right? A bounced light coming in on my left. So I had to adjust my lighting setup so that my weaker light is on my left, my stronger light is away from the window, and then I'm also getting the window bounce light. And now it's perfect. But I had to play with this to dial it in. So if you're trying to get a really nice even, because what you want is an even light. You want minimal shadows cast on the figure, right? You want to be able to look at it. Now, watch the difference if I turn off my little, my little bar light. See how that makes a shadow? So even this little light over here is going to be different. It's going to give you a different, makes a difference, even though it's a tiny little light. So you really are, working off of what works for you in your setting, what lights you have room for, both on your desk and around you, that you're not tripping over them. So that's what, my lights are bigger than an outlight. Outlights are little, because I want this flood of even light. And in my experience, a smaller light just is more prone to throwing shadows because it's emitting light, in a smaller area. Whereas if I'm working with these big guys, then I don't have to worry about it. And I've found a way to kind of, lockstep them into the room so they're not completely messing me up every time I try to get out from behind my desk. Well, War Shadow, you're just going to have to mix it. Just use a tiny touch of black in like Stormy Gray or something. Or you could use Carbon Gray. Always a handy color from the Kickstarter a couple of years back. Carbon Gray is a charcoal gray. So it's nice and dark, and it's close enough to black you could probably use it for NMM, and it should blend pretty well. Yo, Val. But yeah, so essentially, that's my take on lighting. I mean, I've set up lighting for myself in several different environments at this point, and it really does vary by how bright the room you're in is, and, just kind of just getting a balance of light in your work surface. Like, how big is your work surface? How much room do you have around it? So, sorry, I inhaled tea today, so I'm still like hacking up some vestiges of my tea. So yeah, like that. So maybe I'll just paint carpet today. Let's see. Let's map out a freehand pattern. Let's see here. Where is my primer? I have primer over here somewhere. I know I do. Yep, it sits over in my additives slot. Yeah, no, Mad Zeke, I would not default to that window opening method either. 2, 3. I'm going to put 4 drops of primer down. I'm going to put a brush full of water in it. Some people advise you not to thin primers. The Reaper primer is meant to be thinned, just for the record. Some people prefer it thick, and we leave it that way because it's a useful gap filler. Like, it's a useful, if you've got irregularities in your surface and you want to, like, vanish a mold line or something. Our primer is the one thing that is thick enough to obscure details, so make sure you do thin it or brush it on very thinly if you're using it full strength. It also separates out, like, it falls out of solution because it's super fine, so shake it like crazy before you use it. 1 big drop of water. So I use my primer fairly thin. But this stuff's good enough to stick to glass, and glass is like a totally non-porous surface, so it sticks, trust me here. And you can always put on a couple of coats if you want a more solid. Hey, love! How's it going? Alright, I need actual brushes. And I need to drop a pokey tool on myself, because it's that kind of day. It's Blooper Tuesday. So for brushing on primer, I don't use like a normal brush. I use kind of a throwaway brush, because primers do have chemicals in them. So if you're using a brush on, like, it's a different, it has stuff in it that is meant to, let me get my in focus here. Little dancing girl. It has stuff in it that's meant to make it cling better to the surface you're doing. Oh, it's kind of a day. I don't know. I'm trying to turn my mindset around, because it was kind of a neutral morning, and then I went into video and was like, blooper day. Oh, great. And so I'm just working on my mindset right now to get it into a better day. Sometimes you just have to force yourself to say, it's going to be a good day, over and over until you believe it. It really does work. It's ridiculous. It's like you're arguing with yourself. But I've learned that affirmations actually work. So let me get my glasses on. So we're going to prime her rug. You're there today as well, yeah. It also is like, I'm not feeling the groove on this figure, and I was going to do some sculpting to, like, get her little collection dish done, but now I'm, like, kind of like, meh. So I'm going to work on doing a freehand design on her carpet first. So you can see how thick the Reaper primer is by the fact that even with water in it at 4:1, it doesn't self-level. It leaves brush strokes. So you've got a couple options there. You can put more water into the primer and just put a couple coats on, which is what I prefer. You know what? I'm just going to do everything. Why not? We'll just do everything. That's a little better. You want it, ideally, anytime you're applying a paint. You don't want to see a ton of brush strokes. You want it to kind of self-level and flow together and look more fluid. This still is leaving some puddles, but that's not the same thing. Once you have the primer thinned down, you can apply it more thickly. Because it's not going to fill detail once you've added water. That'll evaporate out. And I'm using a big old brush to do this. Kind of my throwaway sable. If any gets on your base, just, quickly wipe it off. I do like to use brush on primer if I'm selectively priming an area. I use spray primers usually in the beginning, but go to these. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just do your best, right, love? That's the only thing you can do. It really is the only thing you can do, so you may as well just, apply it. All right, so let's prime over our little tassels and our little sand that we're going to do. So I'm not going to let this pool anywhere if I can help it, because like I said, it will glob up detail. So unless I want to smooth over some detail, I will not let it apply very thickly or let it pool, especially if you're using this stuff full strength. If you let it pool, it will wipe out detail. And you can use that to your advantage if you have faults on a model that you don't feel like using green stuff to fix. Hold on. I'm missing some chats. Missing chats. Primer has teeth and will eat brushes. Correct, Jetta. Ooh, mental health day yesterday. Nice, Mayabi. Yeah. Affirmations are what I'm using currently to tell myself to stick to my diet. Yes. Yeah, it's true, Ducknuck. And you know what? We all go through that, and it's like the last 90% where it's most prone. It's two places, actually. One is the ugly stick phase, which I usually kind of trick myself around because I paint in sections, so I never really get to an ugly stick phase with most of my models. But when it looks really when you've blocked everything in and it looks just really not finished and you're kind of oh my God, what have I done? So the ugly stick phase is a dangerous point. That's usually about the 25 to 30% phase, I think. And then the other danger phase is when you're really close to done. And that danger phase, everybody hits, and you just want to put down a model and switch to something new. And the secret is really to just power through that. Just put on some music or a podcast or an audiobook you like, and just kind of let yourself do something that you enjoy, or watch a TV show or listen to a TV show. That's what David does. And then do that. Let that distract you while you power through the last part of your model. Otherwise, you never finish everything. Because I'll tell you, almost every model will be like that. It'll be a very rare model where you won't hit that last 90%, where you really only have a day or two of work left and you'll be done, finally. But you suddenly lose enthusiasm. It's everybody on Earth, writers, painters, everybody, every artist or artisan, hits that point. It's very consistent. Everybody talks about it. So it's a psychological thing. And the best way to get through it is just to trick yourself. Just to distract yourself with something else while you're working on that last bit. So that you don't sit there thinking, oh, I really don't want to work on this. Streaming is nice because I can be distracted by helping you guys with all your questions while I'm putting the paint down on the model that I'm not enthused about. Hold on, let me get down. Yes. Yeah, I never really believed in affirmations until I started utilizing them recently, and then I found they actually made a difference. But you do have to keep at them. I mean, they are a thing. They will slowly change your mind. But if you stop doing them, they will stop changing your mind. So they really are a thing. It's just, the human brain is so weird, isn't it? Weird. It's the 9108. Yeah, my Abby. So like I said, shake it up like crazy. Thin it for sures. I did let it pool a little bit around the edge of the rug because I don't mind if I soften that a little bit. Then just, let it dry, let it cure. And then you can paint right over it. here I wanted it not just to, because I can paint right over green stuff, right? Normally I do, but I want the white base on this green stuff, I've decided. The other thing to know is if you use a well palette, the primer sticks like crazy, so you are going to have to scrub to get it up. Put down some cleanser on it. And what I tend to do also is once I'm done with my primer, I grab a huge amount of water on my brush and I kind of swirl it all around the outside edge to kind of head it off from setting, so that I can get this stuff up a lot easier later on. Because the primer, I mean, it's meant to stick, right? So it is going to stick to your palette more than paint will. And so yeah, I'll use a fingernail sometimes, or I use a green scrubby to clean out my my primer thing. Oh, let's see. It's not too hard to paint and chat at the same time, Jelly, when you're used to it. I mean, that's what I do. So now it's natural, but it's nice. It's a nice distraction, right? It keeps your brain distracted. Yeah, have fun. Painting armor. Well, are you using metallics or are you using non-metallics? Love music, because it can get metal. Metallics are pretty easy, actually. I would start with a lighter metallic and use washes to shade it, and then use the metallic itself to like kind of highlight and bring it back up after the washes darken down the metal a little bit. I think that's the easiest way to get nice results with metal. Right, exactly. Muse's Touch, you've got it. Just enjoy the section you're working on until you look at it. You went in over your head. Yeah, just use metallics, and like if you're doing metal, if you're doing silver or steel love music, just start with a lighter. Like a lot of people reach for a middle metallic, but I think it's better to kind of start lighter, like silvery. And then if you put a wash of black over the top of it, or or a dark gray, you can then after that dries just highlight, and it's a lot. I think it looks a lot better. If you want to be cunning and cool, you could put some other colored washes on it too, like a blue or a purple or something after you put the black down. And that'll give you subtlety. That'll give you like little subtle colors that'll still stick in the shadows. Yep. And washes, if I assume you have some washes. If you don't know, you could use a sealer, a brush-on sealer, or a matte medium to make washes, better washes, love. I use our Reaper brush-on sealer. It's like, oh, wrong bottle. But this is also, I mean, if you buy a matte medium at an art store, it's kind of the same thing. You can use them interchangeable. So I use 4 drops of this, 2 drops of water, and 1 drop of black or brown liner or, any dark paint. And that's the ratio, 4-to-1. And this will make it more transparent, and it keeps it in the cracks, so it dries well. So it's a way you can build a wash out of any color. So there you go. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. You're learning. Washes are a good tool if you're trying to get some quick shading down and make more complexity without a lot of work, really. Especially if it's got big armor plates. All right, my primer is almost dry. I'm going to throw the mini around because, bloopers day. All right, cool. So let's look at our Persian rugs because, hey, no problem. I am here to help. It is what I do. So I was looking at Persian carpets because, round Persian carpet. Given most of these Persian carpets do not have tassels. But as you can see, there are some recurring themes. They almost always have a central section with kind of star shapes going off from it. Or if it breaks up, it's like got a grouping of triangular shapes going off from a center. There's one. There's a tiny star shape. There's another like kind of, that's kind of cool. Maybe we'll do something like that. That we could do. But yeah, so just do a Google image search, and look around until you find something that you think is really cool. And you're not necessarily even looking for colors. Don't copy the colors necessarily because you won't be able to see a lot of the subtlety of a lot of these colors, but copy the design that you like. So like, let me just click on that and see if I can get a better image of it. Yeah, I can. Oh, look at that sucker. So Persian rugs. Yeah, let's do it. Oops, rugs.com wants to sell me stuff. No, rugs.com. I do not want it. I just want your picture. That's all I want. So there also are always a border around, and we're going to take this and we're going to break it down into something simple. Also, rugs.com seriously wants your attention. Don't ever go here. I hate pop-ups. I will never have a pop-up on my website. Ever! Yeah, so we've got a band with a border, pretty much concentric rings, right? Until you get to the middle of the rug, at which point you've got different things. In this case, we've got kind of a tiled design. So if you look at this design, to break it down, you'll see it's really just diamonds. So, like, you know, there's a line there, and there's a line there, and then there's a line that crisscrosses those lines. And they're kind of swoopy. They're a little bit rounded, which gives you more of, like, this oblong shape and less of a diamond, a true diamond. So when you're breaking down this shape to something that's this small, one, you could just go back, because that's almost exactly the same size, right? And see what you see at this scale. So what we see is a dark band, a medium band, and a light band, especially a light band, then another medium band, and then we see those diamonds, and then we see the central, I forget what they call this, central kind of round design, mandala? Is that what I'm thinking? Something like that. Coffee and pizza? Hey, D. Clearman. So yeah, finding a Google search and finding one that's like, that you can kind of break down just when you're looking at it little and tiny on your phone, and then you can go bigger if you want to. I'm going to stay little and tiny, and I think I really like this kind of like diamond pattern, though. It makes it a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to put a border around the outer edge, and it's got this one had little flowers, but we could do a flower, or we could do something else. We'll decide. I'm not going to go straight from their design at that point. I have to do something that'll work on a 28. So, but when you're trying to take a complex freehand design and transfer it to a small model, you've got to break it down. So you've got to just say, don't try to put all the tiny details. Uh-oh, rugs.com wants me. Don't try to put all the little tiny details that were on there. Just kind of like look at it and say, okay, so there's a border with little dots around a wider border. Then there's an inner border with more little dots, and then there's the diamonds in the middle of the circle. So I kind of have to look at where she is and extrapolate from the curve that I've given the rug, how big it is. She's a little bit off center, I think. Although the curve that I've sculpted is almost the same curve as is on there. So I could just put her on the middle, just give her a shadow under hers. So anyway, that's a good start. So now I want to probably block it in a darker color. A lot of this, I have to decide on a color now. So I've got a pattern, now I need a color. We're not going to go with that dark burgundy. We're going to go something more like she is. I kind of feel like I want to go blue and gold with this. Because I need it. She's got a lot of colors on her and we can't clash. So doing a darker version of a color that she has on her is probably the best option. Because you don't want to make it really light, because you don't want to put something really light by her feet. It's going to distract away from her. But doing something darker is going to be a little less distracting. We also have to think about the fact that we're going to be doing freehand on it, which is automatically incredibly distracting. So it's going to be really a fight to keep the attention of the viewer up here, where the important part, where the figure is. When you put too much detail and too much crazy down here, everybody just stares at the base and says, oh, I love that rug. And then you want to punch people because you're like, but the transparent cloth and the blah, blah. And you're like, no, freehand. So be careful with freehand on your bases because no matter how well the model is painted, if you do too much, too tight, too tiny, too intricate, it can really attract the eye to that. And that's not the important part. So yeah, so I think maybe dark blue and gold, because there's a lot of gold and cream on this. So dark blue, gold, and cream. Let's do that. It should work. She's got creamy colors on her skin. And obviously her hair is golden. So that'll also repeat colors around the model, which I like. So that, I think that'll be what we go with. So now I have to decide what I'm going to start with. I probably will start with a base for the gold. Because cream is really easy to draw over the top of things because it's so close to white. It is easy to sketch in freehand with cream. But the gold bands are pretty thin, and they'll be a lot harder if I try to do them. So I think I'm going to start with just doing it gold, and then sketching in designs with my other colors. So we're going to reach for our rich leather, because that's our base color for gold. And we're going to just paint the whole thing in that, and then we're going to start blocking it out. Probably with dark blue. Because I want dark blue to be my filler color. And I'm not going to take my gold very shiny. Like here, if you look at it, the gold really is just kind of that brown. It is almost that color. Look at that color in the rim there. Well, let me zoom. It won't let me zoom. But you see how that color is very close to that color. So we won't have to highlight it very much at all to get it to that rug. Hey, JLT. Thanks for the raid. Hi, everybody. I'm Anne from Reaper Miniatures. I created the Masteries paint line, and I do this show about painting in the mornings on Reaper Miniatures channel. Welcome. We were doing freehand today. I was just talking about plotting out a freehand design for the rug that our dancing girl is standing on, and that's the pattern I'm going to base it on. So we were just talking about what to start with and what colors to make it, because I'm not going to copy the colors. I was really just looking for a design. So we are about to start blocking in our rug, and I decided to go with the kind of a diamond pattern here with the outer rim. Now I'm going to go dark blue instead of golden cream, and so we'll see how it goes. But I wanted to go darker because, as I was just telling everybody, when you do freehand down at the bottom of a figure, you really risk distracting from the figure itself, because freehand itself is really tight and detailed and distracting. So if you go too far with your freehand, it's going to totally detract from your figure, which you never want. You always want people to look at the important thing, which is the figure you just spent all this time painting the transparent cloth on and stuff. So we have to go gently here. We have to go a little bit cautiously, and I'm going to be keeping an eye as I block in these details on how distracting it is. But I'm going to keep my shapes really, really simple at first. And I probably, even though I really like this diamond pattern, oh, hey, maybe I can get it to go big. Even though I really like this diamond pattern, I'm probably going to go bigger with it. Instead of having like 3 or 4 little rows there, I'm probably just going to go, oh boy, and it's a spiral. I just noticed that. It's actually a spiral. Crazy. That's interesting. Except that there is an inner circle. So it's just the outer. Man, it's so weird. So weird! It's hard to see, but it looks like that outer rim might be... No, maybe it's just oval. Yeah, okay. Whew! I was crazy. No. But anyway, so we'll probably only go with 2 different diamonds. We'll simplify everything. When you're taking this down, going back to the original source, which is about the right scale for this, gives you an idea. Those diamonds are really, really hard to see. So that's where we're starting from, and I'm going to start from the gold because it is the thinnest bits. I also may make this more gold than the rug that I'm working from. I'm going to put some water in my paint. We're starting with rich leather, which is a great dark gold color to start with. And where's my water? Right, so but put it somewhere up higher on the figure then. This is the danger specifically in applying too good of freehand to your basing. Ask John Bono about this, because he painted the 54mm Fenari, the Paladin from Reaper, and then he did a parquet, tile, mosaic floor on it. Everybody walked up, and the only thing they said was, wow, that floor is awesome. And John just wanted to, scream, because he had done a fantastic freehand job on that floor, and he was really proud of it, but he was proud of the whole model, and nobody even looked at the rest of the model. They're like, oh yeah, Fenari's cool, but the floor... So beware. Beware of floor freehand. Because it is tempting, when you have a large floor, to do some freehand on it. Because it's all this blank space. It's so easy compared to everything else. But it is not always a great idea. I'll probably make the tassels gold too. Maybe I'll make them cream actually. Because I don't want to make them something that's going to clash with the sand. I might have to make them blue in that case. Yeah, maybe we'll do a dark blue edge. I have to kind of think about the fact I'll probably paint the sand in after I get this blocked in. And we'll do the sand, because I do think probably then the tassels have to go dark blue. Hey, Cybestorm. Yeah, so the biggest thing I'm going to have to figure out here is where she is in regards to the center design, because everything kind of works out or in. You have two choices with a round design like this. You can work out from the center or in from the edge, depending on, you know, like just how you feel about it, really. Some designs are much easier to work out from the center. Here, I think I do want to do an edge because it'll give me the edge first, because it'll give me an idea how much room I have for everything. All right. And I will line around the edge of this carpet as well. I'm going to leave the tassels for now. I do want to, let's see here. So if I can extrapolate in my head, there isn't much carpet left on the outside. So she probably is actually standing on top of the center design. So what I probably could do is just do a shadow right under her, and then actually just start with my little diamond shapes. Like, she's standing on the mandala in the middle, so I don't have to actually paint it. But everything can kind of work out from her. So I made, that actually sounds like almost a better idea. So let me choose a dark blue. What do I want to do? Yeah, exactly, Doc Knock. That's exactly the danger, right? And it's the danger I'm going to have to do here. Now, another way I could do it, though, is if I fade it out a little bit. Like, if the rug is really worn, then the pattern's not going to be as bold. I can achieve that effect by glazing. So once I do my pattern, I can assess how distracting it is, if it is, and then adjust things. Let's see here. What kind of blue do I have? Usually I would go for Brion at this point. Brion blue is 9055. But I think I might not have it, so I may have to mix a dark blue, actually. I don't have Brion, but I do have Sharkbite's more of a teal. I was hoping I had Templar blue in here. I thought I had put it in here, but now I am not seeing it. Man, well, I've got Ritterlich, so we'll mix something from that. I don't want a really, really vibrant dark blue. Let's put some white in Ritterlich and see what it looks like. Yeah, I get asked that, Cybestorm. I did it once and decided it looked horrible and never did it again. Because the problem with mixing TMM and real metallics and NMM is that your NMM will not look like metal. It'll look like something else. Maybe shiny leather. Or maybe not even shiny. Like, essentially what the problem is you're sending a viewer to two different signals. You're saying, hey, look, it's a shiny thing. That is a shiny thing. So essentially, if you're using metallics, everybody's going to instantly say, oh, okay, that's metal. But then you're doing non-metallic metal, and then everybody's going to go, well, what's that then? Because it's not metal, not next to real metal. So essentially, I'll always stick to this idea. It does not work. It doesn't work. You could do it to maybe suggest ceramic, but even then, once you start using like a real finish, like a real metallics, or a gloss sealer, you've kicked yourself out of the NMM ballpark at that point. Unless you add gloss over the top of, like if you do an NMM like ceramic armor and you add a gloss over the top of it and you have metallics, that can work. But it's still going to be weird because you're suggesting highlights artificially next to something on the same model that is actually reflecting light. And they're not going to match. So you've got a choice right at the beginning of the model. Am I going to go for real finishes, i.e. TMM and gloss sealer, and using a variety of different gloss or dull matte finishes to suggest my the glossiness of and the material that I'm doing? Or am I going to be artificially doing all of those effects, at which point gloss sealer's off the table and true metals are off the table? Because, yeah, it's because the thing about NMM is you are artificially controlling the eye of the viewer, right? You're using NMM to show where a light source is coming from. So what happens when you've got true metal on that same figure And then you're in a room where the light source is different from what you've painted for your NMM. So then the metal looks real, but the NMM looks completely wrong. Think about it that way. But yeah, I did it once, and I realized immediately that it didn't look right. And then I figured out why it didn't look right, and never did it again. Okay, we're going to start with some Ritterlich, which is a beautiful dark blue. If you do not own it, you should run out and get it. It is, it's a really deep, dark, vibrant navy. It's in the same triad with Brilliant and Cyan, and those of you who know me know that Cyan Blue is one of my go-to blues for everything. But we don't want this blue to stay this dark. So we're going to add a little white to it. And then I may mute it out a little bit, because I don't want it to be at war with anything else on the figure. So let me just add a little bit of white to it. It does have black in it, so this should give us a gray blue. And where's my water? There it is. There we are. All right. Glasses again. But yeah, as always, you got to ask yourself with the NMM and TMM, ask yourself kind of what works better for the figure, what your intentions are with the figure, right? If you're doing like a lighting effect, I would say you use NMM all the way for the same reason. You're trying to create an artificial effect. So if you have actual metallics on the figure, and those metallics are picking up light that fights with the effect you're trying to give, that's not going to work very well. So it's kind of an off navy now. It's has a little bit of gray in it. But it's still pretty dark. I'm going to see if it's dark enough. It might not be. It might actually just need a little bit more Ritterlich, because I am kind of using it as a liner. Maybe I'll use some pure Ritterlich as more of a liner and filler in and drawing tool, and then that'll be my go-to highlight. All right, so now I need to make some decisions. Let's look at our rug. All right, rug here says that the blue should be what is separating the diamonds, and then there's probably a gold band around that. So, alrighty. So the first thing we need to do is figure out how far our little diamonds are going to go and how much room our band at the outer edge is going to take up, and we're going to use our Ritterlich to draw that in. I'm going to thin it down because it actually does have pretty good coverage. It should still give me a decently dark line at this stage. We'll see. That might not be dark enough. But I don't necessarily want a really hard line at this stage either, so we'll see. This is sketching. Essentially what we're going to be doing is kind of sketching in a design. Often I do this with white, but because I want some dark, the dark is really what's lining this. So let's see. I want to leave a border and I want to have enough room for a couple rows of diamonds. So I'm going to say that I want to be about there. And so I'm going to look at that space and I'm going to go around and we're just going to connect the dots. If you try to draw a line around, you're almost certainly going to depart from, you're going to lose track of where your edge is. So I just tend to go and do little dots so that I can keep equidistant. I'm also looking at the space here from the edge is also the space from her feet somewhat. However, this is going to shrink as it goes toward the back here because she's more toward the front. So I'm kind of looking at circle, keeping my circle intact, putting my dots the same distance from the edge. And then I'll sit and I will connect these once I get back here. And I'm going to go a little faster here because I don't have an edge to go to. There. So now I've got a bunch of dots. See my dots? Dots, dots. Now I can just gently connect them. And if I need to correct anything at that point in my circle, I can. I can also look top down and go, all right, do I have a circle? More or less, I do have a circle. I need to like put a dot in there. But yeah, if I look at her top down, I can see that I have a pretty good circle. So that's a sign that I've done well on my spacing. But you have to simplify it, Dogfather. Like I'm not doing, don't look at all the tiny details. You got to break it down. Break it down. I'm trying to get my phone to like listen to me and it doesn't want to. So yeah, if you look at this, you're going to get overwhelmed. That's why you look at this and you just go, okay, there's 2 rings with a cream band in between them, and then there's some dots. Done. Don't go too crazy with it. Always break it down into the simplest shapes you can. Once you have those simple shapes down, if you realize, oh, I think I could probably add a little more detail here, then great. So now we just paint around and connect our dots. I'm just using, again, a little dashy stroke. I'm not going to try to draw a perfectly straight line. I'm just going to connect that dots. And then you can kind of touch up, right? If you look at your circle after you connect your dots and you think, this isn't, actually I got kind of wobbly at this edge, you know, or whatever, you could just correct it. Because this is more of an oval, but then this is also a worn rug, and we all know that rugs don't stay the same shape, right? They get worn and flattened and kind of distended, and they get dragged around a lot, and the corners get flipped up, and the parts that get danced on or chaired on most often get worn. And so there's a little bit where I got a little bit too close to the edge, like it goes bloop out, so I'm going to trim that in a little bit more. But yeah, the thing is that you never, ever, ever do as complex a design as you find online. You learn to break it down. You say, all right. And then once you've got that down, once I've got my cream band and my gold bands, I'm just going to touch this up with a bit of gold. It's going to take a couple layers because the Ridderlick is stronger than the rich leather. So that's touched up. So now we got a pretty good round, actually. Not bad. All right. And any flaws in your circle, like, this is an okay circle, but it is definitely a little squishy up back here, I think. But any flaws in your circle are going to disappear when you start doing freehand patterns. Be aware of that. It's why you don't have to get plaid perfect. Yes, I can't do that yet. Yes, Grey Wolf has it. But once you see how simple it is once you do it, I mean, it's really not that bad. So now I want to do, I think I want to start with my slightly lighter blue here. And I'm going to assume she's standing in the middle of the mandala, and I'm going to start doing those kind of a wave. Remember how I said those lines around those, the diamonds, the soft diamond shapes? The lines are kind of curvy. So if you look at it, it's like if you draw a line, this is a little bit, has a bit of a curve to it. And it's going to be closer together at the top, and it's going to spread out as it goes out. So right away I can see that this shape, you know, if I follow this little band of shapes, it starts narrower because these are smaller, and then it gets wider and wider and wider as it goes down. So I am going to use that for reference in my little drawing, but I'm not going to do nearly as many scales as there are on that rug. Let's go back to my Google search. And again, I'm going to be ready to touch this up if it doesn't work. So I've got to figure out how wide. And if you really want, you can make these really wide, like, and make it very simple. So how intricate you want it to be is, you know, how wide you make these. And let's see. And again, you don't need to even make them the same width. You should try to get them close. If you want kind of a hack for this, figure out how wide the foot is here and just kind of make little dots going around so that you can duplicate it. I gotta be careful here because I've got a little bit of imperfection in the green. So that is going to have to be a line. That means I need to figure out what I'm doing here. Hello, planer. Sup. And there will be plenty of mispaints as I map in this design, but that is why we are mapping it in. This is why you sketch in your shapes, so that you can fix the stuff. So that was probably a little bit too swoopy on this line. We'll see. We're going to continue going. We're going to see if our swoops may fade out as we get further and further along. And I'm just going to get, just in general, like I just want to get the general design. It does not have to be perfect. The lines can vary in thickness. You just want to get the gist of it so that you can get your little diamond shapes by doing a crosshatch. And if some of your waves are a little bit bigger and some of your waves are a little bit littler, we're okay on that. We're just going to assume that things have stretched out on one side of the rug and not stretched out on the other. You want to keep it like within reason. But once we start filling this in, we can actually adjust it a lot. Because remember, these blue lines are the backdrop, right? And we're going to put little diamonds. But we can alter the size of the diamonds as we go. And we can fill in a little bit more blue in all of these stripes to adjust our pattern. So, yeah, Declarement, I never did that. I usually don't sketch my design on paper. I usually just do it on the mini. But I also have a drawing background, so I've got enough control usually that I don't have to worry about training my hand. However, Declarement brings up a great point, which is that if you are not into drawing, then sketching it out on paper gives your hand practice at doing the shapes at the scale. Yeah. So if you're not a big drawing person, and also it helps to sketch it out with a brush, not a pen or a pencil. I'm okay today, Planner. It's kind of one of those bloopery days. So now I need to go in and consult my original picture, my original rug. Need to look at the rug. Come on, rug. Come on. Rug. There we go. So, all right. So, rug. Okay. And kind of middle. I'm trying to see where to start my crosses. Because that one starts here. And then it's going to start a little bit. Okay, so middle of the previous one? That's so hard. All right, so now I'm going to get in trouble. Because now I have to figure out, well, maybe, no, I guess they're starting at the same point. All right, so that makes it a little easier. So now I've got to figure out how I want how far over I want to be. So let's do that. Let's go from the top of every stripe to the bottom of every stripe and do it that way. Sometimes when you're working with a complex pattern like that, your eyeballs just blur out and your brain explodes and you're like, what? But now we've got kind of our crisscrossy thing, and that's making our diamonds, right? We can see where we're going to put our little diamonds. So I'm starting at the top of one, and then I'm skipping this one and going down to the next one. And I'm curving these because I want them to be a little more like flower petals and less like diamonds. Oh, that's a good idea, two-pan. Yeah, a brush pen works a lot like a brush, so it can help you too. Yeah, that's a really good idea, actually. If you're comfortable with a pen, but you're not as comfortable with a brush yet, using a brush pen. It's a really nice idea. Thanks, Panjean. Pan, as I call you. Uh-oh. Ah. Oof. This is getting tight on this side because I have such a little... Uh-oh. Yeah, I did screw it. Did I screw it up? Man, this is so hard. I did screw it up. See if even I can screw it up. Hold on. We have a lack of crisscrosses. This is not acceptable. I second-guessed myself and forgot to skip one. It's like, no, you must skip one. Although this is also getting closer to the top here. So actually, I think I'm doing it right. But you lose the top little oblong because she's in the middle of it over here. Now is the time maybe I go from the other side. You can see though that I'm doing that flower shape. Yeah, I didn't skip one, John. You're right, because it's just that the little tippy top of the shape right up here is like falling under her. So it's like, it's really, I was starting over too much. I started over here instead of over here. That's what I did. All right, let's do that again. Because these little rows are really tight together. There we go. So the bottom was correct, but the top was not. And this is where we have to get. It's really close at the top of these, but it'll even out in a bit as we get out away from her feet. See, I missed the top. I didn't miss the bottom. So that's tight. But we'll open up a bit more over here. But you can see how even just applying, and this is very simple. There's only 2 petals instead of like 3.5 like there were on the original rug. But starting it based on that design is giving me a very pleasing flower pattern. And it's going to open up more over here. Yeah. So it does look like a little compressed over there, but it's a rug, so it can be. Maybe the rug got stretchy in part. It's worn in a part, and it's not worn in other parts. There we go. And then we lap ourselves, right? And now we have a cute design. There it is. Yeah. Well, she's dancing on it, right? So yeah, it'll kind of scuff and not stay all spread out, right? In quilting, that's a dahlia pattern. Yep. I doubt, I mean, she wasn't quilted. I'm sure this is woven. But yeah, I'm sure. I'm curious as to what they call it. What Persian weavers would call it. All right, so gonna solidify the outer ring here. Once we've got our sketch in, then we want to go and start really deciding like what our little diamond shapes are going to be like. So now we just have sharp edge diamonds, but if you remember from our rug, the diamonds are actually much softer. They're more like little footballs, right? So they've got a much rounded edge, not a sharp edge like they have here. And we're going to do that by just widening our blue stripes. So let's get close. There's our blue. And you can see that I used a darker blue for the outer edge, and you can see the lighter blue showing up here. So I like my lighter blue, so I'm probably going to utilize it now that I've got it all drawn in. This is the about 4 drops of Ritterlich with one half or one small drop of pure white. And I can go in and kind of go in, and how much work you want to do here is up to you. But I can essentially go in and take all of the corners off, because remember, the blue is actually the background. So I can soften, make all these diamonds into footballs, more like flower petals, like dahlias, as they were just saying. And that also lets me introduce more blue here to make blue the real background. And I can kind of squish some of these designs up here. And I can mess around with my composition, because remember how it gets kind of squished over here? So essentially I won't widen the blue as much where the design is getting squished, and I will widen it more back here so that my little footballs are more consistent. Now they're still pretty squished in some of these areas, but as long as they're close, most people are going to see the pattern and not necessarily the individual details as much. And keeping this dark does help. Helps it not fight with the dancer herself. She wants to be the center of attention. She does not want people throwing money. Well, she wants people throwing money at her rug because, you know, it's her money then. But still, she is the point of this exercise. So then you're just going to tweak your design. And if the same thing goes for if you wanted these not to be footballs, but to be something like a circle. you would just make it a circle and everything else would be blue. And it would result in you having a lot of nicely spaced little tiny circles on your rug. I do probably have to do a bit of shading up under her feet. So I'll probably grab some walnut and do that. But yeah, so we got to do all these little footballs. Freehand is like time consuming, but it's fun. You just kind of zone out. You put on your music or your book and you just fill in all your little cute little things. See, so now we got more blue here. And that's nice because I want this all to cool down. I don't want it to be too warm and distracting. So, and I think here I might also put a dark blue band around the outside. So it's going to have cream features on it, but here's the point where I'm like, all right. Now here I'll just kind of wing it. I'll kind of keep an eye on how far I am from my central mandala. Remember, I want a gold band between my footballs and my outer band. The outer band will have cream designs on it, but I want it to have a dark blue background. And I'll start just by making it real narrow, and then once I've got this line nice and equidistant from the center pattern, then I'll start pushing it outward toward the edge and making sure that that is all nicely spaced. But don't try to like mess around with more than one direction. So I want this much space between my football design and my outer rim. So I'm just going to like dash this in. And this is where it's going to like hit there. At which point I just do the back. Got a little bit of green showing here anyway. Need to cover it up. There we are. All right, and we'll come out the other side. So we're seeing, we're starting to get there. Now the fact that I'm painting this blue over a gold and not a white actually does change its color at first. It will look a little more muted and not as bright as it would, as it does look. It looks more intense in the palette. This will change as you build it up. The blue will become a little more powerful because it'll start covering over all of the brown that you started with. And then it'll get more intense. Just like painting over black primer instead of white primer. It's the same thing. If your paint is not perfectly opaque, it will look a little bit darker if you put it over a darker base coat. Now we're getting out to the edge here. Using a good brush with a good tip so that I can adjust things with pretty fine lines. Okay. Toward the end of the stream, I'll get some green stuff out and set up her little collection dish. I'm using a trick that David used on his Reaper Best in Show winner. Alrighty, so now we've got a pretty nice design shaping up here, right? So as we widen out this this blue design and make the diamonds into more footballs, a little bit rounded, more like petals, the blue is becoming more predominant, right? And now we can back off and assess. And so far the design is pretty subtle. Like it's not going to distract from her as it stands right now. Yeah, you're right. Stretch time. Thanks, War Shadow. So yeah, so let's give you guys, let's do a focus here. There, now you can see it a little bit. And we will get up and stretch. Thanks for the reminder. All right, this is actually moving right along though, and I like this design. I'm glad I chose it. Standing up. Alrighty, if you've been standing or sitting or doing something in one position for more than 45 minutes, please stand up and stretch with us. Stretching time. I haven't seen Pendrake today. I hope his back is okay. Pendrake, are you out there? Yep, stretch out your front paws. Do your best yoga. Child pose. Child pose stretches out your paws. I have to do the over the head thing for sure because I need to remind my back that it bends the other way. Oh boy. And then the behind the back stretchies to remind my shoulders that they don't just stay hunched. But yeah, if you look actually at her and you look at the front versus the back, you can see how much more blue is coming out. So that's nice. I like it. And this freehand, because it's flat on the ground, won't really get any shading or highlighting, except for like her cast shadow. So it's going to be pretty flat, except for the little tassels, which are more 3D. No Pendrake in the chat? Hope he's all right. All right, yeah, my back is definitely feeling it this morning. Alrighty, let us do some cat-cows. All right. There we go. Much better. Ah, definitely feels better. So got to remind our spines to do things that are other than hunching over and painting or typing. Oof. I am back. I return. Hydrate. Hydrate. Go get your tea or your coffee or your whatever. In my case, water. Alrighty. Sweet. Back to Dancing Girls Carpet. Any questions about freehand? Everybody's just been staring. I can sense it. And again, you want to get a lot of paint off your brush. See how good of a tip my brush holds after I unload it. And even if I screw up these lines, guys, like even if some of my footballs are a little bit weird, remember I'm going to be filling them in as well, probably with a cream color, which is easily going to cover over this. And so I can continue to adjust my design with every color I use for filling until I have it pretty much where I want it. And I will continue to adjust it and change it a little bit here and there. Like I might decide some of my footballs are way too big or some are way too little or they're not like, they're not consistent. So I will use the cream or lighter gold paint, whatever I decide to use. I'll use it to adjust them so that they're more consistent. And this is kind of the fun part of pattern freehand, where you can change the pattern, just give it little adjustments and tweaks. Like if I decided to go very much more intricate with this, I would do it like after I had most of the pattern like already ironed out, and then I would choose to make small changes and additions to take it really, really fine. And I may do that. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. All right. So over here in this really compressed area, we're going to actually not alter our design very much. We're going to just make our lines a little heavier. But we don't want to, we don't want as much wide blue here. We want to, because our design got a little compacted, we want to keep it pretty broad. We'll still like trim the edges off of a couple of things. But we won't do it as heavily as we did it previously. It's a little better. Boom, boom, boom. There we go. All right, now we get to go in and fill in our little footballs, I think, and see how much or how little we need. So our middle footballs are going to be cream, I believe, if I choose to use this. And I think I am. I'm going to use it. I'm going to make that cream, though, by just taking my gold and adding some white. That'll make the colors go well together, which can be a concern. Normally, I would use, oh, darn it. I always give David the loan of things, and then they, like, don't come back. I need to go ahead and get my glue off of his desk, I just realized. All right, so let's see here. So we want to grab our rich leather, and we want to put it into a new well. Normally, I would use stained ivory for this, because it's the best dark cream that used to be in Master Series, but it got canceled, so it's no longer there. So I'm sad. But it means I'm going to mix a color that's similar to it by using rich leather and white. That's a pretty good color. Stained ivory was maybe a little less yellow and a little more... Let's see, I think I've got it over here somewhere. I held on to it because I love it. That's driftwood. That's oiled leather. That's creamy ivory. Maybe I didn't keep it out. Yeah, I put away some of my canceled colors because I didn't want to use colors for you guys. But that's close to creamy. So, it's a bigger brush, Pangene, and I'm using more water in my paint. So it's going to stay, hold on, let me get back up. Okay, so the thicker your paint, the more likely you're going to have a dry brush tip. So ask yourself first how thick your paint is or how thin it is. A lot of this stuff is about a 2-to-1 paint to water. It's actually quite thin. And that means that it's going to stay wet longer in the brush, straight up. So the first thing is how thick is your paint? And then the second thing is how are you loading your brush? Like how much paint? How big is your brush? If you use tiny brush, like I was using yesterday for a lot of my work, like the brush I'm using today, look at the size difference. The brush I'm using today is on the right for this freehand. It has a lot more area to hold fluid, which means it's going to dry out a lot slower because the paint and the fluid in the brush are going to keep it wet. The other thing I do is after I rinse out my brush and it's got all this water on it, I don't dry it off on a towel or my pants or anything anymore. I just squeeze the water out of it. So I just do this and this. I've got water. There's my water. Look how nice the tips are on those brushes. They still have some fluid in the brush. And that's going to help to keep my paint wet. So those are the tips. If you're having paint dry out in your brush, switch to a bigger brush or thin your paint more. And if you're using a very tiny brush, expect to dry out and that you'll have to reload regularly. Let's see here. This is actually a size 1, but the size 1s in different brands are very different. Know why? So this is a Raphael 8408, which means that it has the more tapered tip instead of the more the broader brush, and it's a size 1. But I mean, in a different brand like the Da Vinci, a size 1 is much smaller. So you really got to learn. See, look at the difference. Both of these are size 1s. But with the Raphael, this is the 8408 size 1 Kolinsky. But yeah, so it's fluid in the brush. Like I don't dry off the brush after I rinse it. I just pull the water out of it. And it still has a little bit of water in it. So when I dip it into my paint, that fluid back here is going to help keep this paint wet just because it's not totally dry. I started doing that when I stopped brush licking pan. Like after a friend of mine got really sick, I stopped brush licking, and I had to come up with some way to point it. So I started I normally don't even do this. I actually do it in my hand. So I bring the brush down between my fingers and I just turn it. I'm turning it in a circle, and then I pull it out, and there it is. It's perfect. As good a tip as I ever got from brush licking. So I stopped brush licking like 20 years ago and started doing that. Oh, wow, the Raphaels are... Well, I'm glad I got backups then. So I don't know about that. Maybe it is the opening and then they vary. I'd have to look, though. Let me see. Where's my 1 and my 1? That's not the case. The opening of the ferrule is different for both of these brushes. You can see it. And they're both 1s. So that is not the case. Yeah, I'm glad I have a backup or two of the Raphael then, because I do this 8408. I love them. They're perfect for my style. They're not perfect for everybody, but if you work a lot with really thin paint like I do, and do a lot of fine lining and small detail work, they are pretty much exactly what the doctor ordered on that. I think I'm going to put a dark band around the very outside as well. Because I want these to be blue as well. So let's do our blue tassels, which I sculpted myself. I'm so proud. There we go. And then from those tassels there, I can make a final blue border around the outside. And if I screw it up, I can just paint over it. But I'll make this outer gold rim here, this outer gold stripe, just really thin. And I may decide to thin down the inner stripe as well to give it kind of a balance. We'll see. We'll see how it looks. And then we'll start using our cream after we get this all mapped in. The more blue the better, because I do want this to be a blue carpet, not a cream carpet. The color that takes up the most space is going to be the predominant color of the rug. So... yeah, if you use a really big brush, it takes a long time to unload it. And the 8404 is much thicker, so it's going to carry a lot more fluid, Fubeka. Like I have a fresh 8408. I don't have an 8404. But you can see how long the taper is. Like it starts getting really narrow, like right around here, and it tapers like that. Whereas an 8404 is a lot fatter up toward the tip. Like the fat, it doesn't get this fine taper here. It's more fat, and then it has a really good tip. The 8404 is really ideal for working with thicker paint. If you work on a wet palette, then 8404 will probably give you better mileage. But if you work with a well palette like me and you do a lot of thinning, then 84.0. Oh, poor weasels, my butt, Joe Ferg. Weasels are one of the most bloodthirsty, nasty animals in nature. I have no sympathy for the weasels. They are nasty animals. They're cute, but they're nasty, nasty animals. There we go. They are not like ferrets, which are cute and like adorable. Yeah, they're nuisance animals. They would have hair on their bodies, but not their tails, Joe Fur. This is tail fur. They'd have naked tails. Just putting this blue on my tassels. There we go. And I need to make sure that that blue line of blue around the outer edge is a thing. So it makes sense that the tassels are blue. Hitting brush issues now, Fubecker, really? Oh, COVID outbreak on the mink farms, yike. Yeah, well, if dogs and cats can get it, then other mammals are at risk. Alrighty, so there we got a nice blue rim around our carpet. Sweet. So what are you having problems with hitting brush issues then, Fubeca? Like, what do you mean? What kind of brush issue? Be specific. Otherwise, I cannot help. But if you have the 8404 and you're thinning your paint as much as me, then you're probably running into the problem just because it's really hard to unload your brush enough and to control the paint. Too much water with the 8404. Yeah. So maybe doing the actual finger squeeze then is the way to go. Like, you could even like dry off your hand and do a second one. Like, that should be just fine. And since you're hitting the entire ferrule, it'll catch any drops as well. Yeah, because you should be able to work with the 8404. Just if you've got too much water that's staying in the brush, I would definitely do the squeeze out and only dip a little bit in here. Like when I'm loading my brush, you know, I'm only doing a little bit, like a third of the brush maybe, and then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'm unloading for like usually between 8 and 10 dabs on the side of the palette. So I'm unloading a lot. That's something that I keep having to repeat. Hey, Fido. That I unload my brush a ton when I'm using thin paint. You've got to dab it off so that it comes to a really good tip, a really good point, and notice that the paint is still sitting in that first third of the brush. Yeah, you should be able to get, if you've started doing that, you should be okay. You shouldn't even need the towel dab with a squeeze. You don't want to take too much moisture out of it. Although with an 8404, maybe you do. Like that's because it is a bigger bodied brush. It is going to hold a lot more fluid. All right, so we've got our freehand mapped in. We've got our blue rim painted on here for the most part. And we've got our little tassels blue. So let's go for our cream and start really refining. Thanks, Fido. Yeah, she's almost done. We're just doing the basing. I have to set up her little collection dish that's going to go off the rug over here toward the end of the stream. I guess we're getting close. I guess I should do that. Curses! I wanted to do some cream. Well, let's do some cream, and then maybe I'll just have to do the collection dish next time we paint on her. Or I'll set it up in advance, and then you guys can see how I do it. All right, so each of these little footballs, this gives us our chance to tighten up the design. Because the cream is going to, I just painted an outline there. The cream is going to be really high coverage because it's got a lot of white in it, right? Because it's half rich leather and half pure white, and pure white is really opaque. So Let me actually get this a little bit closer. There we go. There. So it's going to cover really well, which means that now if any of my little footballs are sloppy, which several of them are, this is the time that I can kind of refine them and make sure that they are, if I want them in this kind of teardrop shape, I can refine them and make sure that they're there. Like, and also I can tackle things like my blue being a little wide here. Maybe I just widen out my little scallop there. This is a weird shape right here, so I need to take my blue and make that more of the shape I want it, because I lost a little bit of that diamond shape. So now is the time to take your cream. Well, Wapple kind of like brought that back, but Phyto oil paints on miniatures have been a thing since the 50s. But it was mostly in the historical circles. It was before really good acrylic paints existed for miniatures. The oil paints are what those guys used for all their like historical 54 millimeter models and stuff. Like the oils were far more prevalent when I started doing miniature shows like MMSI Chicago, which is the Military Modelers Society of Illinois. Those guys had never really had like in-person classes at their cons because oil paint isn't transportable, right? Like when you paint a model, it's going to stay wet for days. So you can't just wrap it in a soft thing and put it away, right? So they changed over now. Acrylics with Vallejo and MSP and other really good acrylic paints have caused those guys to slide toward acrylics, and now the rest of us are sliding toward oils because of people like Wapple, who's making it look really cool. And so people like us who didn't even look at it before and started with acrylics are sliding that way. So that's why you're seeing it, Phyto, and it isn't new. It's been around for a long time. It just, wasn't our audience. The people coming from gaming, like D&D and Warhammer and stuff, and Privateer Press, War Machine, we started all with acrylics, whereas the historical guys started with oils in general. And so now we flip-flopped a little bit. But that said, although oils are good for some things, they aren't as good for others. And so it's really, you have to ask yourself if the model that you're painting benefits from the qualities of oils. Oil paint can get you a wonderful, vibrant color. It can get you like jewel tone transparency. It can get you skin tones that look like they're alive. It can do some things better than acrylics because it's got a bit of transparency in it, and that affects all those things. It gives you the option of doing more realistic skin and really jewel toned stuff, but it costs you in being able to do fine detail like this. So you can do detail, like Wapple's done freehand on his stuff before, but it is a lot more you're never going to get the tightness because that's not how oils work. Unless you are willing to wait weeks for it to dry and then go over the top of it with thinned oil for the fine details, then you can do that. But you can't do it all in one go, like with this. Hey, Orcrist, thanks for the raid. No, old car models and stuff and plane models used a lot of enamels, Phyto, but the actual figures, the 54 millimeter and 72 millimeter historical figures were oils, and because the enamels wouldn't give the right finish. And also, yeah, just a little bit different. But yeah, the enamels for sure for all of the vehicles, but not necessarily for figures. You can start with acrylics and put oils over the top. You cannot do the other way, because the oil will essentially repel the water. If you try to start with oils, work on acrylics. You might be able to seal it and do it. I don't know. I've never tried it. Yeah, I started with enamels a very long time ago when I was a small child because we had plane and car models. And so we had gotten some enamels for those, or my parents had gotten enamels for those for us to play with. And so I started with enamels as well, but then I promptly threw them over for acrylics because enamels were a pain. Yeah, thank you for the raid. But yeah, you can start with acrylic and do some underpainting, blocks in of light and darks, some fine detail if you're going to glaze over it, and then do oils to get like the vibrancy of color that you just can't quite match with acrylics. Yeah, so here we go, guys. So I'm slowly, essentially, tackling each of these little footballs and trying to get them more in line with each other. Now, there's definitely flaws here, but you notice that once the design starts to come together, you don't really notice the flaws. You just notice the cool pattern, because our eyes love patterns. So it's going to pick up the pattern. Even if the pattern isn't perfect, it's going to find it pleasing. So this is the danger point where we kind of have to, as I adjust this pattern and as I get closer to the model looking like I want it to look, I have to ask myself, is it going to distract from the figure? And keeping it dark and keeping it a little bit muted, so far, I don't think it does. I think the figure is bright enough that you will still see the rug as a kind of afterthought, but we have to keep an eye on that because we really don't want to... its vibrancy to translucency, I mean, it's a whole different kind of ball game, Twisted Oma. I mean, the color's a lot more punchy. But you do have to paint like an oil painter, so you're going to be doing what I do and mixing white with transparent colors to get opacity if you want opacity. Do you, Beams Badman? You use the varnish over enamels and then ready to paint over again? Yeah. Traditionally, using acrylics over oils doesn't work, but I'm sure that if you can get a sealer to like Tester's Dull Coat, if you could get something like that, and spray it over the top of your oils, then you probably could use acrylics over the top. But it would look kind of funny because of the depths of the oil and the kind of like matteness of the acrylic. Like the dull coat spray over the oils would kill the vibrancy of the oils because you're going to lose some of that. Glossier paints appear more vibrant, and so you're going to lose that. So you really should ask yourself, does this model benefit more from oils or acrylics? And proceed accordingly. Thanks, No Direction. Yeah, she's really bright. I wanted to do pastels for sure. I've not done a model with kind of bright pastel colors in a long time. So, and then we chose the dark blue because I didn't want to overwhelm the model. And it's a darker version of the blue that I'm using to shade her blues with, so it all will work. And I'll probably highlight this blue a little bit, but first I want to get my pattern down and see if it was going to work. So far I'm pretty okay with this cream, but I'm using it, you'll notice I'm just using it to kind of edge. I'm doing kind of the edges of each of these little things, and that's because I'm just adjusting the design right now. So I'm still debating whether I might want to keep a little bit of the gold in the middle and just do an edge of cream. And this is something that could make the design look more complex. If I just filled in each of these things solidly with cream, it would still look like a cool design, but it would lose something. So I'm playing at this point to see if, to see what I can do and see what kind of design I like and see how the design itself is coming together. And adjusting parts that I did kind of wonkily at when I set it up. So yeah, we'll have to work on the collection dish next week since we're out of time on this one. But so if I strengthen my pattern there, notice how keeping that gold, that dab of gold in the middle makes the pattern more interesting. It also looks like I've done a lot more work than I really have. So really, the intricate details only come in after you've done your very basic design. Then you start playing around and saying, okay, now I could put like maybe tiny X's or dots along this gold section, or I can do, do little flowery designs on this blue section or whatever. I can decide whether how complex I want things to go, essentially, at this point after I've got it blocked in. Acrylic over oil, the acrylic would shed from the oil's chemistry. Yeah, you can do it, but yeah, I would agree. Yep. Yep. Jelly, I agree. Yeah, long term, I also doubt whether it would work. Like I said, I have one model in all my collection that I'm considering doing oils on. Just for fun, because I have water-soluble oil paints, so I'm going to use them eventually. But the model itself is very simple. And it, you know, I want to do some vibrant, deep colors with it, so I'm just curious as to whether I can make it work. It's been a very long time since I used oils. I typically would not use oils on figures because I like the fine detail, and like I said, oils are not real suited for that. There are plenty, that said, there are plenty of painters, canvas painters from the old days that did do extremely intricate small detail in oils. So it's not like it's impossible. It's just not as easy as it is to do with acrylics. So yeah, so tightening up that pattern there, we can see how that's coming up. But I mean, oil is oil and acrylic is acrylic, and it's like, you know, mess around with both if you're interested. Only problem with oils really is it's expensive to get into them. But then you could argue the same if you buy a crap ton of acrylics. So, and do make sure you've got something to clean your brush with, or go like I did with the Winsor Newton Artisan oil colors, which are water soluble. Because I never want to deal with mineral spirits again. Actually, pigments are different from them, Professor, right? Because, like, the pigments used in oils may be the same compounds, but they're in a different medium. And I don't know that they're necessarily chemically identical. I'd have to look that up. That's actually a paint chemical question. But yeah, you're probably right. The particulates are probably the same, and it's just the vehicle. Different surfactants to hold everything together, different binders. Different gums. But yeah. So it's really, you know, that's why I say it's really what property of oils is it that you want to use on your figures. Don't just decide to do a figure in oils without thinking about how oils are different from acrylics and what you want to do with the figure. So yeah. Yeah, I created Master Series, and I know just enough paint chemistry to get myself in trouble, Professor, so yeah. I did Reaper's paint line for 15 years. So I learned a lot about acrylic paint, how it functions, what's in it, the differences between bases and all that sort of thing, and the different resins. But oils are something I never messed with because I didn't want to mess with solvents. So yeah, I just never want. I'm the one with the cool palette. It is a really cool palette. It has tiny wells. Yes. There we go. All right. I'm going to go back up so we can get a look at her. So, all right. When we look at her, we do initially see the bright colors. That's great. Because that means I can go intricate with this design, and it's probably going to be the second thing you look at. And that's what I want. I want you to see the figure first, and then see the cool rug, and say, oh, that rug is cool, you know, but see the figure first. So, but yeah, this is a good palette. I mean, for me, it works because I'm using I'm using fairly large amounts of paint in here. The smaller wells keep the paint wet longer. I mean, my primer is still good, and I started with it at the start of this hour-and-a-half painting session, and it's still fine. You do have to learn to kind of look at and see when your paint's becoming gummy, and add, you know, around the edge, and then just add a drop of water at that point to keep it good. But I mean, I used a palette like this at Paint Club at Reaper, and that was a 4.5 hour stint, and I didn't have to remix my paint. I just, you know, added a drop of water every hour and a half or so, and it stayed fine. So yeah, no brush lick. Well, no brush licking in general, Krios, for me. I don't brush lick anything anymore. Not for years. But yeah, I'm not into solvents. I don't think they're really necessary with miniature painting. I tend to think acrylics are kind of a superior tool, especially with little guys, where you have so much fine detail to paint, like her little jewelry items and everything. Like doing that in oils, And then waiting a week for it to dry. You know, just not into it. Oh, it's all because of me. Yeah, this pallet has been on backer. Well, it's because of the container glut in like the shipping ports, right? Where all those container ships were sitting out on the water and they ran out of room for them all and stuff like that. So anybody trying to restock anything from overseas is kind of screwed until everybody gets things ironed out. Sadly. But yes, that's where we're at. So today we talked about mapping a complex freehand design and turning it into something simpler. So we started out with this and notice our elements are there. We're going to have a band. We have the dark band around the outside. We're going to have a gold band and a cream band and a gold band. And then we've got our diamond pattern. We decided she was standing on the central piece of that, so we didn't have to worry about it. But we've got all of those factors, right? We've got a dark rim and a gold band and a center band and a gold band and then our little diamonds. So we've stuck with the essence of that design and we've just interpreted it a bit more, simply for a 28 millimeter model. Oh, this is going to be sand for sure, Jelly. I'm going to go with probably desert sand, maybe a little bit more golden than that because I want to echo her hair color a little bit because I like to repeat colors around the model. But it'll be like a pale desert sand. Yeah. So yes. So that's what we all talked about today. So next time, I'll try to set up her little collection dish, the green stuff, before the end of the stream. And we'll also work on continuing with our design here, and we'll probably block in the sand and start painting it. She's very close to done. So, yeah, she's got a couple of, she's got the transparent cloth effect going on, and then she has now the freehand effect. So she's got some nice things on her. But yeah, she's coming along very nicely. And the only reason I didn't put another tassel here is because I was planning on a collection dish. So we'll get our collection dish in there, and then it won't bother me that I don't have more tassels. Yeah, I think so, John. I think that's pretty much what we covered today. So tomorrow is the Genie time. And we'll probably work on figuring out her accent color for her flower beads and scarves. So we can start. And I kind of came up with an idea for her smoke, but I'm not going to have time to implement it tomorrow. The tassel is sculpted. They're all sculpted, but I'm putting a collection dish here, so I decided not to put tassels there and there. Yeah, you could easily do it. Just take a bit of cardstock and an X-Acto knife, draw it out, or print it prof and just do it that way. It'd be hard because the figure is standing in the middle of it, right? But that would be the worst part. If I had thought about doing this earlier, I could have just snipped off her base, right? Cut her off her base, and then done the rug and done the stencil and then glued her and pinned her onto it. And that would have been, the way to do that. So I like to freehand. I enjoy doing this sort of thing. So for me, the airbrush wouldn't be worth it. I can just do it, draw it in. And it keeps my detail work, impulses like sharp. Like if you never try to do fine detail, you won't get very good at it. But if you continually try to do it, your muscle memory will refine until you're able to do tiny details. So that's in favor of not using the airbrush and stencil. But if you were doing something, something large, or you were repeating this pattern all over, say you were doing like a harem and you had all these Persian rugs all over the floor, and yeah, then totally stencil it and do it all, right? Yeah, if you were doing a big diorama or something where you needed to repeat a design, that would be totally fair. Totally fair. All right, yeah, let's find a raid. Who are we raiding today, John? We are raiding Zambies. Awesome. Tell Zambies hello from me. I'm going to head off and start getting lunch done and my walk and everything. And yeah, I'll be on my own channel streaming later, guys. Twitch.tv/paintingbig. Maybe we'll work on the Templar today. Maybe I'll decide to go and work on her. So have a fun day, and I'll see you later.